Greetings, and welcome to Conversations with, Exploring Hard Decisions While Living with ALS, presented by ALS United Greater New York with our staff hosts Nancy Brenner and Debbie Schlossberg. This series of recorded interviews with a variety of special guests will explore and present topics which are sometimes sensitive, personal, or may not be addressed in regular support groups, but which we know often provoke thought and deep questioning.
Hello, and welcome to Conversations with. My name is Nancy Brenner, and I'm here with Debbie Schlossberg. We are part of the Care Services team at ALS United Greater New York, and we want to welcome you to our second session of Conversations with. The first session is up on YouTube, so if you haven't seen it, please make sure to check it out. We have the same guest for our conversations today as we had last time, Natalie Bauman. Natalie was with us last time to talk about legacy and the importance of storytelling and the importance of leaving a legacy behind. We are all in a position where one day we won't be here, and it's really valuable for friends and family to know us and to be able to revisit us with our stories. So today we welcome Natalie Bauman back. She is an award-winning video producer, writer, and director, and she's used her professional skills throughout her career to help people, families, and organizations to explore their history, values, and legacy through storytelling. Natalie is here today to share tips and tools on how to actually go about telling stories. So without further ado, we warmly welcome Natalie Bauman.
Why, thank you. So glad to be back again. It was really fun the first time, and excited to give people tools that they can take to do their own storytelling when they don't have access to a professional or just really want to do it themselves with their family.
So, Natalie, it's wonderful to see you again. Thanks for joining us. And before we dig into some of the DIYs, maybe you could just start by giving us a brief overview of the different ways that exist for people to document their stories.
Sure. And I think some of these will kind of light a fire for some people because they'll say, oh, that sounds really important. That I can do, because I feel like it's a little daunting for people to think about documenting their whole life. Take that off of the table and just think about little bits and pieces that you can do that could be fun and things you can do with people in your life that you care about. The obvious thing is to do your life history. And, you can have a list of questions as a starting place. You could start, in a sequential way with your family's history, where your grandparents came from or whoever came to this country first, and how that all happened, what you know about your grandparents, your early life, and work your way towards the present with your kids and grandkids, if you have them, or the people that are in your life and the things that you like to do. And so it could be a series of questions where you examine those things and you share as many details as you can. In that family history, genealogy can be a piece of it just by itself. You can take old family pictures and talk about them. I have, like many of you, I'm sure, pictures of my family from 100 years ago all over the house. And there's nothing I like better than when my family's over and we kind of reminisce about, look at that outfit, like what were they thinking, or where do you think they were? Is that at this place or another place? And so that history stays alive when you kind of talk about the historical aspect. So just even using photographs, family heirlooms, you can go through your house and think about who gave you a certain vase for your wedding present, or something that you picked up on a trip to wherever you like to go. And those become part of your family history and your lore for the future. So even when you're thinking of certain pieces that have meaning to you, it doesn't have to necessarily be something with historical value, but it's something that has personal memories tied to it. And, when you're gone, it's just a vase. When you're here to tell the story, it's the adventure that you were on when you bought that vase or a piece of art, or even just a photograph that you took. So that stuff can be really important. One thing that my mom did for me, and I'm so grateful now that she's gone that we have this, is I was visiting her one day and she's like, okay, here's all my jewelry. And she literally took all her jewelry out and laid it all out on the bed. And she explained, who she had gotten this from, who she'd gotten that from. So, like when I wear these earrings, I know my dad gave them to her on their first anniversary. So to me, it's much more meaningful because they're not just a beautiful pair of earrings, but because of what they meant to her. So think about those kind of details as you're telling your story and blend those in so that that kind of joyous remembering becomes part of documenting that. And it's also good, from an insurance perspective, it's also good to document that things in your house that have value as well, because then, hopefully nothing ever bad happens in someone's home, but if something gets stolen or lost, they have a documentation of what it was and where it was from. And then, of course, something you alluded to a little bit earlier that I think is really the most important thing about telling those stories is, you think about making a will for all your physical things and who's going to get them and what the value of them is or are. But really, the legacy of your ethical and values statements, things that are important to you, what you believe in the world, is as important or more important than the physical things you leave behind. Who you are as a person, the lessons you've learned, what you believe, what you value. Those are the things that really have the strongest impact on the people. And especially when we're gone, if they know those things about us, then they really truly know us and they have a piece of them, in a piece of us in their heart. And that to me is the most important thing.
I love that, because it's true. That's what keeps somebody alive, right? Is knowing the special details about them, the little quirks,
Yeah.
That's a really nice thought. What ideas can you give us on who can participate in storytelling?
Sure. Well, I mean, I think the first thing to recognize is not everybody has children and grandchildren. And even those of us who do, don't always feel like the next generation is that interested right now. I know when my grandmother was still around, I wasn't. And I hate to say that. I'd never really asked her about her history very much. She would share stuff with me, but I didn't have the understanding or the appreciation at that younger age when I was in college, right before she passed, to even think about that. So sometimes it's okay to just tell the story for yourself. It's a cathartic experience. It helps on a very personal level to understand yourself and to have that kind of life value review and think about what's important to you and what you've experienced. And I think even though it's kind of hard to start with something like that, I think it's a really beautiful experience to go through. So you don't even need to be telling the story A, for somebody else, or B, with somebody else. You could be, if you have a phone and you're still, able to speak well, you could be, just telling stories into your audio recorder on your phone. And it can just be a very casual, unplanned thing. Or if a grandchild or a friend or somebody in your community wants to work with you to help you, it could just be very casual conversations. Like let's put together a list of like 10 or 15 things that you want to talk about, that you want to document. We'll just check them off as we go. It can be once a month for a year. It can be whatever you want it to be. There's no rules about how to document your story, either how to do it, what to include in it, or who you have to do it with. So if you have somebody to support you and help you, that's super helpful and easier. But I think it's also kind of a bonding experience. And I think we talked about this quite a lot in the first program that we did, is that when somebody sits across from you and asks you about your life, there is magic that happens. I've experienced this with people who were previous strangers to me, who I've become quite close with. As you sit for an hour or two and they share stories, all of a sudden stories start coming out that you, because you're in a trusted environment with a trusted person, you are able to open up more and become more vulnerable. And that's where a lot of these really meaningful moments happen. Yes, you can just tell the stories about what happened when and where, but the whys and how it affected you and how you felt about it, those are the questions you need to build in and push yourself a little bit to reveal, both to yourself and to the person you're documenting your story with. That's the hard part, but it also kind of starts flowing naturally once you open up and let that process happen.
So it's like the process itself, not only the finished product, but the process itself is, to use your word, a little bit of magic.
Yeah.
And I love the idea of inclusivity, that, families are defined in so many different ways, and communities defined in so many different ways. And it helps us to break free of, the traditional, well, if I can't tell my children, then it's not worth it. There
Right.
may be a lot of audiences that could participate in this magic. Natalie, tell us a little bit about some of the methods, the techniques. What sorts of things can people utilize when doing this?
Sure. Well, I mean, I'd say start with whatever is easiest to you. You can get as sophisticated as hiring a video production crew to come in and document, and someone to interview you, and spend a lot of money. But I'd say start with the easiest thing, a piece of paper and a pen, the things in the home around you that are meaningful to you, the pictures, the heirlooms, and just start. If you can record those conversations, it doesn't take any extra time to just have an audio recording going. And then you can either be writing it down, or you can just record those stories on a phone, or you can even get a lot of people like myself probably still have cassette players, the little portable ones. You can, probably still get them at the drugstore, and just record whatever it is you're able to talk about. There are lots of tools out there within, a Word application or online, where you can transcribe your audio recording very easily. So you don't have to write down every single word when you're recording it. You can just record it on audio and then transcribe it later, and decide later what you want to do with it. To me, the most important thing is that you document the stories while somebody is still able to share the stories. And, as we know with ALS, as you get further along down the road, speaking becomes harder and harder. So there is an imperative to get that story told as early as possible. There are, and you guys have some ideas that I'm excited that you're going to share about how people who are further along the road dealing with this illness, that they have more challenges, but there are still ways to do that. So I would say start today. Start simply, just record it and then transcribe it. And then you can decide later, what do I want to do with this? Do I want to put it a little book together? Do I want to take the audio recordings and put photos with it and edit it? Using iMovie on like a MacBook, or there's a lot of tools you can even use at the library if you don't have the technology. And there are lots of resources that you can use that are free and accessible to put the stories together, but it doesn't have to be put together. It just has to be captured. That is the most pressing issue. Don't wait for tomorrow on that one. Get it recorded now.
And as you intimated, people in our community have maybe additional challenges to tell their stories if they can't speak. So one thing that I'm guessing people could do is use their eye gaze equipment. Which is, in case you are not aware, is equipment. It's a computer that is controlled by somebody's eye movements, and people can record their stories that way. And they can have a family member be there with them in case there are questions, for further exploration. But there are ways that everyone can tell their stories, and seems like it's such a meaningful thing to do, not only for the next generation, because what I'm hearing is how meaningful it is for someone to review their life and and see what they've done in their lives. And even if it's little things that they don't initially think are important, they are important. How somebody has lived their life is important. So there's always a way for people to tell their stories, even if they have these challenges. So thank you for saying that. And we totally encourage people to find the ways, and they can always be in touch with us about it too.
Another option too that I wanted to share is that because the eye gaze technique does take quite a bit of time to execute, what you could do is take the time, choose your questions together, and then take the time to have the answers written out from the person using eye gaze technology. And then you can have the recording session be a person in their life with that person reading their answers with them there. So they're still present and part of it, and they supplied the content behind it, but someone else could read it for them. And so that can still be an interactive and a very heartwarming experience to have that person on camera, being part of that process too. So
Yeah, very important piece of that. Thank you. And what kind of equipment would be needed, or what is suggested?
sure.
In addition to like eye gaze equipment or a phone, are there other things that people should be aware of?
Well, like when you're doing video, if like, especially for video, that's the highest end version. When we started the interview, I was playing around with trying different lighting options, and I decided to just work with natural sunlight. So I have a window right to my right here, and it kind of highlights, and you see a little shadow here, but it's a very natural, warm light. If it was a very bright day, I might pull my shades down so it wouldn't be too glaring, but the other thing is you can also have a light in front of you, like, so the camera's in front of me right here. So I would have the light behind the camera. So that would be probably a little bit farther back to cast a warmer light on my face. You never want light to be behind you, because then it's not going to look very good. So putting yourself in a place with natural light is also very important, because it's easier when you have a lot of like professional lights up for a high-end video production, or even some of the bigger family documentaries that we've done. Those are important because you might be in a room without any natural light, but usually in someone's home, where most people I think would be recording it, there is a room where you can find some nice soft lighting that will make you look your best. And again, the same thing, even when you're thinking about what to wear, like I love to wear this color blue when I do interviews, because I just feel like it's my favorite color and it makes me happy, but it also looks good on camera. So you're always thinking about, before you actually record, where do you look the best? What are you wearing? And then with today's technology, the audio built-in microphones are really high quality. If my ice maker started going off, or a pet came in the room, or a phone rang in the other room, it would ruin the interview. So you want to make sure all your outside sources are turned off, or you're far enough away from them that it doesn't impact it. You can't avoid an airplane flying over you, or somebody in the house deciding to make some noise, but you can try to plan the stuff in advance and give everybody around you that notice, and turn off your phones. Little things like that can augment the quality of what you're doing. Again, this is not for professional consumption. So if the dog barks, it's okay. Maybe he should come over and you can pet him, and that's part of the video, you know? So
Part of the legacy is your love for animals.
right, absolutely. You kind of have to go with it. And even, with interviews, often conversationally, we step over one another. You'll say something and I'll say, oh yeah. And then you'll go on with something else, and Debbie will jump in with something. And that's very natural conversational techniques that people use in their day-to-day lives. And that's how we affirm what somebody said. That's how we let them know we're listening. We nod, we say, uh-huh. But in an interview, you might want to consider trying not to do those things. And it's really hard for most of us. That's not how we naturally talk. And it's an interesting learning tool to step that back, because you're thinking about what's being recorded. I do love having conversations between two people on camera. So if I had somebody here interviewing me, it would be a conversation between that person and myself, and you'd see the side of my face. Whereas we're all facing our cameras directly. So it's a different kind of experience, but my favorite thing really is watching grandchildren interview their grandparents, and just seeing the interaction and the warmth, and, the little gestures Nancy had alluded to earlier. It's the little things that make them who they are, the little sounds they make or how they laugh. Those are the things that are really special. And you don't necessarily think of them when they're happening, but when you see them after someone's no longer with you, it's really beautiful. So in terms of equipment, there's nothing that's really needed. For example, like right now I have my computer stacked on 3 old encyclopedias to get it to the right level. I have the light to my right. I've got everything kind of turned off in the house. My phone is upstairs. And I've prepared the equipment that I do have, but I'm not using any special gear. I do have a microphone. If I was going to be in a louder place, I would probably plug a microphone into my phone, and you can get them for $20 at any kind of computer store, Apple Store, Micro Center, any place like that. They all have them. You go in and you tell them what you're using it for. And it's not a bad idea if you're about to begin, a 100 question program with your loved one or your friend, and you know that you're going to be doing a lot of them. It's nice to have good quality audio, because bad audio is really hard to get around. So I would also recommend recording one question first. Make sure everything works correctly, that you've recorded it, you've pressed the record button, you know where everything is, the microphone works, because there's nothing worse than having recorded a bunch of things and have it not be available. So you don't want to waste that person's time or yours. So test it out first, make sure everything's working well. And you can probably work with what's already in your home and in your purse or in your pocket.
Also, as you're talking, there's a lot of talk about AI, right? And I'm guessing that there's tools out there that might help. And I'm thinking about Pat Quinn, who was one of the creators of the Ice Bucket Challenge. And there was a report about him, how they took, because he had so many interviews about his life with ALS, and he was so involved as an advocate. They had many recordings of his voice, and they were able to put them together onto his eye gaze equipment so that he could use his voice. And there is voice banking for people who are not able to speak, and they can use their own voice to tell their stories if they have banked their voice. So I just wanted to mention that as well.
And the technology is changing quite drastically, quite quickly. And there's going to be a ton of different ways that AI will support people who don't have a voice anymore. So I definitely think people should stay open to that as well. It's really exciting to hear about those types of things.
That'll be part 3 with you, Natalie. AI.
I might have a little learning to do between now and then.
So you mentioned in a couple different ways that it's helpful to prepare certain things ahead of time. Can you talk a little bit about that? What sorts of things should be ready? What kinds of perhaps questions, all of your questions, some of your questions? What's good to have prepared, and what's good, if anything, to leave up to the magic?
Well, I'm going to tackle the last part of that first, because people's life stories can be very sensitive. I did a series with some people who had Alzheimer's, and the memories that this woman was sharing, we were doing the videos, recording her life story at the facility in which she lived, and it was to be shared with her family. She shared some very personal stories, because the filter was no longer the same as it had been before her Alzheimer's really became more severe. And she shared a lot of stories that I wasn't really sure that her daughter wanted to hear necessarily. And I think too, in general, people's inner sensor changes as they get older. My advice would be to be prepared with what kind of stories that you know of that you want to hear. So maybe, there's stories that you've heard all your life that you have a list of things that you want to document, right? But then I think there's amazing opportunities when you stay open to what is, not what you think it should be. And I know people with any kind of, people, even as they get older, I'll claim it, even at my age, sometimes your details that you remember might be a little different from what you remembered earlier on, in terms of maybe you have something written down that has more specific detail. And then when you're dealing with people who have any kind of memory issues, we work really carefully to meet them where they are, to not have expectations of what you want them to tell you. If they don't tell you what you were expecting, but you can maybe delve deeper into a different direction, but just by using the phrase that we talked about in the first session. And then what happened after that? Or how do you feel about that? You take the pressure off. I think there is a stress reaction that happens when people feel cornered by not knowing the exact year that something happened or the details of where something happened or who they were with. And if you take that pressure off, all of a sudden that opens up something in their memory that they're able to really connect. Like, I don't know how much you've worked with music and memory program, but music, when people with Alzheimer's play it, it opens certain parts of their mind that were closed otherwise. And I think there's a lot of different pathways, and not just through music and memory for people with Alzheimer's, but for all of us. There's certain things that trigger moments that come back to life for us. And as you're interviewing somebody or recording them as they're reminiscing, you want to be open to those moments happening and to facilitating them, because that's the depth that someone might want to share. You know, they may or may not want to share that. They may not remember it. They might not feel comfortable. It could be a deep, dark secret that they've been wanting to share, and they feel like now is the moment. So I would urge people to be brave and to just listen and to let them tell you what they want to tell you, and not correct them, and not be waiting for the right answer or a specific answer. Just be truly in an active listening mode with them, and just value whatever it is that they're sharing with you. And then, you know, you can joke around with them later about, are you sure you wanted to say that? Or whatever the case may be, but be actively listening and just allow them to share whatever they want to share. And some people also give them the dignity of not pushing if they don't want to share.
That sounds like really good information, because, you know, it's not so comfortable, like you said before, for everybody, for certain people to share. So if they're in the most comfortable possible situation, they will likely share more.
Absolutely.
And you started to give some techniques on interviewing. Do you have any others?
Oh, sure. The first thing is just start. Like, even if you feel like you're not prepared enough, like you should have done more, or you didn't really think through all the questions, when you have the opportunity to be with somebody, just start talking. You can start with, I think people think that when you're doing like a life story review type of thing, you have to start at the beginning with the history. Sometimes just start with today. You know, what are the things that you like to do? What are the moments that stand out to you the most? And then you can kind of just go backwards, or let them follow the lead, or you follow their lead about what they feel like talking about. I do find it helpful, the more prepared you are in terms of having a list of questions that you would like to document and to share, then you can kind of check them off as you go. And it might be a little bit all over the place, and that's okay too. It's a little bit harder if you're going to edit it into something later to kind of piecemeal it like that, but that's sometimes how people are best suited to tell their stories. You can let them kind of define that. Make sure you build plenty of time in for breaks for a person, because this stuff can be very emotionally taxing, which can be physically taxing as well. It's better to have a weekly session at noon on Sundays. It's on a regular basis, so they kind of get into the rhythm, and it's like a regular get together type of thing. If somebody's capable and they want to talk for 2-3 hours, God bless them. That's really hard to do. It's hard to be on camera for a long time. At the end of the day, it's very exhausting, because people, surprisingly, it takes a lot of physical energy to summon up some of that emotional energy as well, and to be vulnerable and talk. You can also, at the end of your session, maybe talk about, what did you like about the session? What was surprising? What didn't work? What do you want to do differently next time? Then you just modify it as you go each time. But again, open communication between the people who are working on the storytelling together is really helpful. And modifying that plan and being flexible is super important. But the one thing I definitely want to suggest, that people label the materials that they're recording really well. Whatever your plans, your system is going to be, keep it consistent. So it might be Natalie Bauman, 5, 10, 24 interview about family history. And then the next one might be interview about childhood, interview about, so just the more detail you can have on that label. And I like to back stuff up on my actual computer, but then I also have a cloud version, and then I'll maybe put something on a flash drive. A new technique that I started doing this last year is I was digitizing a lot of family pictures. I created multiple family photo albums, and depending on who is in the photos, I would invite different family members to be part of the photo albums. Then you can upload audio files to that, video files, and still photography. And it's just on my iPad. And then whenever I update and add something new, everybody gets notified and they can join it or not join it. So that way you're not like sending stuff out constantly. You invite them the first time, you let them know you're doing it, and they can find all of your family materials in one place. But your whole extended family doesn't need to see everybody. So maybe they just need to see their side, and this other group needs to see their side. And that way, you're letting everybody see the wealth of material that you're uncovering. And it really is a fun way for the families to connect in a bigger way as well. And you could do that within a community as well. I think
Seems like, I'm sorry. I was just gonna say, it seems like it's such a rich and expansive way to document one's legacy, right? Because you might start off with one thing and then it kind of expands out to other people, to other stories. And I think it's amazing. It's an amazing idea to create storytelling for the family, for the friends, for the community. It's so powerful. So great.
And one thing I might suggest also, especially with people who have difficulty telling their own stories, there are often people in their circle of family or friends who know stories about them. And one of the best gifts I ever did for my mom was I interviewed all of my family about their special memories with her. And so it was a series of maybe 20 interviews that I just did casually whenever I saw them over a month or so. And I just said, tell me your favorite story about mom. And it was hilarious. She got such joy out of seeing what people remembered about her life and their life together. So that's an amazing gift that anybody watching this could put together for a loved one, especially as they're dealing with difficult illness, changes in their life, and their ability to communicate. Just feeling that wave of love from all the people whose lives they've touched and who they impact, to me is probably one of the most special gifts you can give to somebody. So definitely consider doing that.
So Natalie, you mentioned things like labeling accurately and sufficiently. What else? Let's say we've done it. We've got all the content. Everybody did great. What do you do with this finished product? What are the options?
Well, I think one of the nice things to do is to put it together. Don't wait too long to put it together so that you can share it with other people. So whether there's a big birthday coming up or a special anniversary or graduation, share it as a group together, like watch it together. Even if you don't have time to edit it all, just take the pieces of it and watch it in a group format in a way that you can celebrate that person's life while they're still with you. It's even if they can't tell their own story, let other people help tell their story. It doesn't have to be like just a tribute type of thing like you would give for a retirement or a big wedding anniversary. It could just be everyday stories about the special things you did together. That stuff is the kind of thing that just warms people's hearts and makes them see how valuable they are. Like when I talked at the beginning, and this is something I feel so strongly about, that nobody ever says, oh, I'm so glad to tell my story, because everybody's going to care about it. Nobody thinks their story matters to other people. And the truth is the people that you love, their stories matter so much to the people in their lives. And just be a good listener and be there and let them know that you care about what they have to say. And whether you're doing an audio recording, you're transcribing it to make a family book, you're gathering family recipes to put into a little family book to share with all the grandkids, or making a special quilt with their t-shirt, the pieces of their t-shirts, find some way to celebrate them while they're still with you, and work with them at whatever level they're capable of doing. And if they are not, then find other people who can help tell their story and share it with them and let them know how much you value them.
Natalie, everything you've said really is exciting. It makes me want to go do it for myself and my loved ones. It also makes me a little wistful that I don't have these stories for some of my loved ones who are no longer with me. So you can really see that it's a tremendous project while it's going on, and it's an amazing heirloom to leave behind. It's just, it plays so many roles. Natalie, thank you so much for sharing with us. And as we did the last time, we're gonna share all of your contact information in a moment. So to our audience members, please feel free to reach out to Natalie if you'd like guidance and support in your project. And please stay tuned to this channel, to our website and our YouTube channel for more future editions of Conversations with Nancy Brenner. Thanks, it's been great working with you. Natalie Bauman, again, our deepest thanks to you. See you in our next installation of Conversations with.
Thank you, Nat. And thank you, Debbie.